I went to the University of Victoria for my undergraduate education. I did a double major in sociology and creative writing with a minor in Italian studies. So I was doing a lot of things all at once. I originally actually wanted to be a lawyer. So I started out in political science, just political science, and realized that wasn't really what I wanted to do. I was working and a varsity athlete and had a lot going on. So I eventually grew out of the law idea and kind of jumped into a more political sort of activism type field, sociology. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll be a researcher. Maybe I will go on to get my PhD. I don't know. I really liked learning and consuming education materials. So still up in the air for that. I still like it, but I like writing more. Writing always called me back. It really has always been something that I've wanted to do ever since I was a kid. I love stories and I love what they did for people, for me, and I really liked fantasy and sci-fi, speculative fiction. So I really wanted to be able to give that to other people, what was given to me as a child. And not only that, obviously, when I moved into more mature materials, I wanted to also be able to produce that and sort of frame things for people to make them think and to create my own worlds, so to speak. So I've always wanted to be in the writing world in some sense. It wasn't until maybe second year university that I actually joined the writing program and was like, yes, this is something that I want to actually study and be a part of in a more in-depth way. So that kind of took me to where I am now, and I've dabbled in content writing and blog writing and those kinds of things, but now I am starting to focus more on fiction and creative nonfiction. Yeah. That's a good question. I find meaning in everything that I write for myself, even if I think it's completely bad or useless, because I know that it came from somewhere inside me. So somewhere it means something to me. But probably a story I wrote in the 8th or 9th grade was the first time that I'd ever thought that this could be something more for me. It was this little fiction story that was kind of the first few chapters of a fantasy novel. I really want to find it someday. It was all these two girls who really hated each other in their high school, but then they end up being long-lost sisters from a magical world. And it was kind of funny because I didn't really know how to write back then. So all the characters were just named after my friends, and they had the same personalities and qualities of all of my different friends. But that was kind of the first piece that kind of meant a lot to me because I worked so hard on it and I really put everything I had into it, polishing it, making the dialogue look good and look good for, for a 12-year-old. But yeah, that's it. I like to research pop culture topics, and it's from my sociological background. I read a lot of papers regarding queer theory, feminist theory. I try to stay up to date on social movements and all of those things in a timely manner. So as far as researching, if I'm doing a nonfiction piece, I do a lot more research because I want a little bit more meat into what I'm saying and a little bit more knowledge behind a certain topic before I write about it. But as far as my fiction goes, I think I'm mostly influenced by what I'm reading at the time. It's not so much so research, but it's more consideration, I suppose. I have an Italian, a Brit, and American, and so I really had to research British slang and to get that really authentic dialogue because I need their voices to be very different. So yeah, it really depends on the piece. I guess that's the short answer. So distance has been really important to me for a lot of reasons, actually, because it is probably the piece that I've worked on the most, especially because it was part of my MFA portfolio, so I really worked on it for a long time. I actually first wrote that piece in second or third year of my undergrad, so it's been with me for several years, but it's gone through so many evolutions, and I think I'm almost ready to let it go out to a magazine, maybe. But as far as the characters go, when I first wrote it, I was a few years younger than I am now. And I based the main character off of kind of someone I knew who had that kind of physique. And then I kind of molded her over time to be more believable, I suppose, because it was very flat when I first wrote it. She just kind of seemed like a caricature, and it was very mimicky of this person that I knew, and I didn't like that. And also her boyfriend, Connor, was also very flat, very stereotypical, abusive male partner, and I really needed to do research on how to make that male character more authentic, but also more empathetic. Like, you don't immediately want to hate him. You want to find out what's going on, the little actions, what does abuse and violence look like in this kind of relationship, and what does it look like when someone breaks free of that and has a more of a choice. I've really taken to kind of Margaret Atwood's take on it, where she describes planning everything out, making a map. I really like making a map, especially for longer stories, because then I can kind of know the general idea of where the characters are gonna go and kind of fill in the blanks around it. So I like playing with time a lot too, so it really helps when I have kind of like dates and time and, okay, this is the next day now, this is a week later, and so making everything make sense is a lot easier when you plan ahead. And I don't necessarily need to keep the ending the way it is. I often change it multiple times, but if I have the general idea of what I want the characters to do, that makes it a lot easier to write, in my opinion, and my practice. But more so, I think what's more important for me is actually doing character maps. So I want to know about my character. I want them to live in my head for a while and kind of write all these little details about them. So first, before I start writing, like what their favorite color is and how tall are they, what do they look like, what's their favorite music. And so when I'm writing, the authenticity of the character comes out first, and then the actions will hopefully follow the more I write with them, because I'm like, okay, this character X is pretty introverted and they like reading, they're probably not going to do this. It makes it easier for me to kind of control the story, I guess. Yes. I have a Google Docs file titled "The Darlings That I Kill," and it's kind of like, sometimes it's hard for me to let certain ideas go, but I know they have to go because it's just not working. So that's kind of the graveyard of all of those things that I've kind of axed out of pieces or entirely. Sometimes I've looked at a story and I'm like, this whole thing does not work, but the idea is still there. So I just axe the whole story and I take that idea and then kind of like silly putty, like work it in my hands and work it in my mind. Like, okay, like I like these characters. I like the premise, I like maybe the setting, but it's not working in this way. Maybe what if I set it in a different place? Maybe what if it's just the point of view? So then I'm, changing it. So I don't think I've ever actually entirely thrown out a whole idea forever, but it's gone through several evolutions that it's possibly almost unrecognizable, if that makes sense. Motivation as a writer, to make good art, but to also make it marketable for me. And I know not everyone is gonna agree with that, and it's not something that even I agree with most of the time, but it's kind of the reality of the situation. When I'm writing a piece, I do have my audience in mind at all times. Like, okay, who is consuming this? Do they want to consume this? Is this just something that I like to think about in my pastime in the shower? Would anyone else like this? Would a publisher like this? Where is this going? Because it's one thing to make the art, the story. And I think writing is a little bit different than visual art in the sense that a visual artist, if they create something and it doesn't sell, it's still viewable and it still can be taken to other places. As far as a novel goes, if I write that novel and it doesn't get published, no one's going to read it. And I've just wasted a whole year of my life. And I could post it online for free, but then where am I at? So there are all these considerations that you have to have. Writing is a very special medium, I think, because, especially long fiction, I should say, because, it could sit in your drawer forever and never see the light of day. Well, I don't know. It really affects my practice because it's so cathartic and it lets me any creative thing that I can't get on the page, I can get from the wood. I see it, I feel it, I smell it, I cut it. It's natural, it's beautiful. And when I go to the little wood shop and I go to Van City Ladovich to get my wood, and I go there and I see all these trees that have fallen or are reclaimed, and I'm like, wow, what can I make out of this? It's such a different experience, and I really think I need that because getting in my head all the time with just writing doesn't work for me. I know it works for a lot of people, but I need variety to get inspiration. So my business really, really helps me with that. Yeah, sorry, that was super long.